Hi, everybody. Jim Hyde here from LinkedIn Learning. With me is Chad Nelson. He is the Chief Creative Director for Topgolf, but he's also known on Instagram as the mind behind DALL-e, an Instagram account where he posts and shares his experiences and his creative endeavors with OpenAI's DALL-e. Hi, Chad. Welcome.
Hi.
And
great to be here, Jim.
So, Critterz. I follow your Instagram feed passionately, and a couple of days ago I saw this sneak preview of a short film coming out, and I was really intrigued and really happy to be able to talk to you about it. Tell us about Critterz.
The day I actually got OpenAI was last May, so almost a year ago today. And in those first few hours, I started creating characters because in the beginning, DALL-E did not want you to create human subjects. They didn't want real, they didn't want people. So I was like, okay, I understand. And it was closed beta then. So it was invitation only and so forth. So I wanted to respect that. But I really wanted to explore what characters would look like if they were presenting emotion. Could you express joy? Could an AI express frustration or anger or confusion or all these things that we feel? So it was kind of entered into a classic Disney, test where it was like an animator's test, which is like show wonder, show excitement, show joy, show passion, or show compassion. But I was like, well, all right, I'm gonna have to do it with some characters, fun little monsters or critters, because I can't use real people. And so that's what led me down this whole road in the beginning, was using these fun little animal characters or these personas of these little critters to try to build out and express human emotion. So I built about, 30, 40 different characters that first night, literally in that first few hours. And I sent them to OpenAI the next day. And that's what started the whole relationship, because they were stunned at the quality of these characters, because they didn't think DALL-E could actually deliver on that in terms of the model. They didn't actually know it was going to be that expressive or that good, if you will, at conveying these human emotions. And so then a few months later, I said, well, what would be more fascinating is let's tell a story with these characters, that we basically are invented or created with our tools, months before. Let's tell a story. And then with DALL-E's 1-year anniversary coming up on April 6th, it seemed like the perfect time to launch it. Kind of like, hey, as a celebration of 1 year with DALL-E. So yeah, we're launching it on the birthday, or its anniversary, if you will, of the launch. And yeah, it's a 5-minute short film with starring literally the characters I created in my very first few hours with DALL-E.
That's so cool. Now, in the little teaser that you showed, I saw some things that were distinctly not DALL-E, as in a face with a mesh over it. And obviously it's an animated short film, and DALL-E, as magnificent as it is, does not have animation features built in. Can you tell us a little bit about how you made it?
Yes. So my goal was, I wanted every frame and every background and every character to have basically been generated by DALL-E. However, DALL-E is not an animation tool. It is certainly not, we're not seeing text to video, although there's some experiments out there with different software in text to video. The problem I had with a lot of those is it kind of looks like almost LSD vision. The frames are kind of warped and there's imagery that's starting to blur. And anyways, I didn't feel like that was ready for prime time. So I looked at tools that were off the shelf, or other tools that are available. And one of them that I found, actually thanks to my son, who's a computer science major, he was like, well, we could do this with Unreal Engine, and they have all sorts of plugins. Just bring your DALL-E images into it, and he's like, I'll give it a little with Blender, kind of wrapped the 2D DALL-E image over a 3D mesh, which then he could then set up with all the control points, which would then link to a facial capture performance software. Again, all this is publicly available. These are all just plugins. But then he's like, Dad, you could basically animate all the characters by just performing them as opposed to hand animating them. And so when I started doing tests with that, compared to even trying to hand animate it, hand animating, don't get me wrong, is awesome. And you can, and animators, of course, have been incredibly talented at building, amazing characters through hand animation, or more traditional, even 3D computer animation. But in terms of the speed and what we were doing, I found just the nuances and the little quirks and the way I could perform, the acting out these characters. It was amazing how it just sped up the production. I wouldn't say exponentially, but certainly significantly in doing it that way. So yeah, it was, in a way, it was like bringing DALL-E into the 3D world. And who knows? I mean, down the road, text to video probably will be a thing, and maybe that production technique might not even apply anymore. But for here and now, where we're at today, it worked out really well.
That's really cool. So you touched on something there when you talked about it being so much faster, and that is kind of a theme that I see across the world of generative AI imaging. Not that obviously there are people who are expressing concerns about what's this going to do for artists? Is this going to take people's jobs away? But so many creatives who I talk to talk about these tools as being kind of co-pilots, or ways that accelerate the creative process or the ideation process.
Yeah, I mean, the way I've described it now to people is the creative journey in so many ways. It's ultimately, from the initial spark of an idea in your head to then the finish line with a finished piece. That is a piece of that's a linear stretch of time. And usually you go through all sorts of different experiments and visual wanderings, if you will, to figure out exactly what it is you want to get you to that endpoint. And sometimes in that process, finding out what you don't want is just as important as kind of directing it to what you do want. And I find that AI often gets me through working through ideas so much faster, almost in some ways, just like steering me away from all the wrong turns almost immediately, so that when I do find, oh yeah, that's the way I was thinking about it, that's the visual, it's like I didn't waste a week on experimenting a bunch of ideas that I just didn't like. I worked through those very, very, very quickly. Once I find the idea or the visual or the kind of the sense of where, oh, that actually is matching what's in my head, now I can run at it. And so I'm getting to that point where I can go from ideation to execution, I find much, much faster. But the AI still is not taking me to the finish line in my case. I mean, I think of it as almost like a conceptual sketch. I could spend weeks doing conceptual sketches, and then finally I'm like, oh, that's the one. Now I can do those in hours or days, in some cases minutes, depending on what it might be. But I still am, I've never seen where I can take a final DALL-E image and like, that's it. I'm always modifying it from there, and I'm bringing it, into other tools, Photoshop, Lightroom, others, to continue to personalize it and make it my own, and to really make it match what is in my head. But yeah, I think that's just the key for artists. It's a tool. It's another tool in the process. There will be people that use these AI tools as, I call it the one and done syndrome, where it's like, oh, I just want this. It gives me, an image. Oh, that's great. Perfect. One and done. And then they put it in a PowerPoint, and it's almost like print shop, to date myself back to the
Broderbund print shop. Oh, I remember
Broderbund's print shop. Everyone can now make a banner,
on your dot matrix printer.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's what I feel like a lot of the DALL-E or other AI tools, most people, that's kind of all they need. But as an artist and as a creative, I look at it as, it's an idea generator. It's almost like having a think tank or a writer's room, or however you want to put it, like a little brainstorm team. They kind of, again, helps you work through ideas. But I don't find it's the thing that's ultimately, oh, DALL-E's hitting it out of the park every single time at bat. No. I still have to massage it and push it and evolve it, as any creative would.
Yeah. And you shared a lot of examples of that on your Instagram feed, which I encourage folks to check out. Check out DALL-E on Instagram. Congratulations on the release of Critterz. It debuts today on YouTube. and you'll also be talking about it on Instagram with some making of some behind the scenes content too, right?
Yeah, we're gonna, yeah, it launches on OpenAI and Daily DALL-E on Instagram, and then we're gonna do a Q&A live.
Ooh.
And then we will decide when we want to launch the behind the scenes, because I think that's one of the things I'm really curious about is what questions we're getting. But I encourage anyone to see this. Come check out at follow OpenAI, follow my account. You'll see the news of when the live Q&A session's happening. So
awesome. Fantastic. Chad Nelson, thank you so much for taking the time. Chad is also the instructor of a forthcoming LinkedIn Learning course that covers DALL-E and the creative process. So look for that. And again, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.